and welcome to Midnight Readings. Today we'll be reading Death's Door by Dr. Disco. Hope you enjoy. Death was just minding his own business, going over the infinitely long list of names that would die today, and in the next week. Keeping track of souls and crunching numbers was hard. He didn't get his degree in metaphysical math just to completely fail at cataloguing the constant stream of souls going into the afterlife. He was especially anxious awaiting the arrival of a certain purple alicorn that loved books. My, wouldn't Death have a field day talking to her about the applications of dying compared to the total weight of a soul in comparison to how much of a life force it used to die in the way it did? The last time he had such a complicated and entertaining discussion was when Star Swirl had died, and he had moved on ages ago. Or was it yesterday? Time was difficult to tell when you had an eternity. He was interrupted from his musings and his cup of herbal tea when a loud arpeggio of chimes rang around him. Death blinked a few times, unsure of what to make of what just happened. Frowning in confusion at the loss and sudden setback by half seconds in consideration of what transpired, he quickly went back to work. The chimes rang again, and Death looked up from his computer, now fully aware and fully annoyed by the fact that his doorbell was ringing. No one had ever dared ring his doorbell, mostly in fear that he would reap their souls. Death scoffed at that. He wasn't so low as to actually do the job himself. That would be ridiculous. But he was seriously wondering who would possibly attempt ringing his door. He almost didn't even remember it was his doorbell, because the last time he heard it was when he said it in the first place. Scratching his skeletal head, he sighed heavily and tried to forget it. Maybe it was just a very ambitious door-to-door sales pony, and they would soon realize what door they were knocking on. When a moment had passed, Death smiled and went back to his work, now furiously going through the list. He was over 3 seconds behind. The terror! This was setting back centuries, millennia, even eons. As his eyes flitted across the screen, his laptop flew out of his hands and tea spilled everywhere as the chimes were suddenly spammed incessantly for moments on end. Death shrieked in hysterical pain. Jumping around as his cloak was scalded and his dignity was ruined. After flying around a bit, he calmed down only to realize what condition his laptop was in. Mourning the loss of a good workhorse that had survived him 3 centuries, Death grumbled to himself and shuffled towards the door. The shadows around him tightening and withering in annoyance. He would soon set whoever rang his doorbell straight. His schedule was behind. At this rate, he would have to cut time out of his own vacation, and that meant less time to relax. Throwing the door open, he immediately realized just who he was looking at, and proceeded to slam the door shut.
Nope.
Death said, and quickly backed away from the door, shaking his head frantically.
Nope. A broken laptop I can handle. This, just no.
Oh, come on! A high-pitched, muffled voice cried, somewhat disappointed. Not even for a little bit?
Go away!
Death yelled, frantically waving his hands.
You're not supposed to be dead for another 1,000 years.
1,000 years? The voice asked. Why so long? Death winced.
Because it's when your 6th sense expires, and I need to renew it.
There was a silence for a few moments, but Death knew he wasn't lucky enough to have this certain pony disappear on him. If only she could disappear. But Death couldn't kill her, because then that would mean having her here anyways. It was excruciatingly painful to think about. He heard a loud gasp from the outside his door before it started banging in and out, as if a force of nature were attempting to break through its adamantium metal. Nothing could possibly be able to... The door swung open with a loud crash, completely swinging off its hinges. In fact, it flew open so hard that it went straight back and through the wall it was hinged to, before it floated away into the mystical abyss of the higher dimension. Standing in the wake of this completely unnecessary and totally awesome destruction was a bright pink pony, and the widest of disbelieving smiles. Death, however, had a completely disbelieving look altogether. It was Pinkie Pie.
You gave me my pinky sense!
Pinkie shouted more than she asked, and a gust of wind blew past Death.
This is amazing! It all makes sense! How can I sense danger? How can I know when things are falling and when there are alligators in my tub? Wow!
Death huffed.
Of course, is to keep you away from me for as long as the universe will let me, and I intend to use that leniency to its fullest. Just go away from me and live.
Pinkie shook her head, so much that Death was truly afraid it would fall off and she would die.
I can't do that! I still have so many parties to plan, and plans to execute, and executions to delay, and delays to push forward, and...
Okay,
Death pleaded.
then you could go on your way and leave me be. I have work I need to do.
Pinkie pouted, pawing the ground.
Oh, but I brought cake with me to celebrate your 373,923,223,654 deaths to ever catalogue. It was on my list of future things to do for the longest time. What am I going to do with it?
Death stared at her, blinking as he tried to process what she had said. Of course, she was entirely correct. Just when his laptop had petitioned for its ultimate demise, he had most certainly done that exact number. It was just so highly specific, it was next to impossible for her to have known the exact moment he would have completed such a number. Death looked at her in fear.
How did you know it would be today?
Pinkie Pie giggled delightfully, snorting as if she knew something he didn't.
Pinky sense, silly. I thought you were the one who gave it to me.
Only for near-death situations.
Death cried out indignantly. Pinkie was suddenly beside Death and booped him on the nose.
I am near you. I'm right beside you.
Death screeched as the touch burned his nose. He scampered back, trapped between his own walls and the pink devil before him. Acknowledging Pinkie's logic in the next instant, Death groaned and facepalmed.
Oh my god, what the
Hush!
Pinkie said.
The kids are around.
Death stared at her.
Why can you make sense one second and go to making no sense the next?
No one knows how to write me.
Pinkie shrugged.
It's why I'm such a wacky character. I'm the same personality most of the time. It's just how I'm written people get mad about.
Death groaned, placing his head into his hands. He started to excitedly sob, moaning to himself.
When did I allow my life to get this crazy?
Pinkie smiled.
Approximately 1,000 words ago. But don't worry, I have cake.
Cake means nothing to me.
Pinkie gasped, sucking in all the air in the room before expelling it just as dramatically. She stared at Death as if his hair was on fire, though I guess his entire skull being on fire would technically count as something to stare at all the same.
How can you say such a thing?
Death looked up, shaking his head.
When you're literally the incarnation of death, you can't really go wrong with being depressed.
Pinkie jumped into the air, an explosion of confetti popping out of her mane with an added sound effect.
Then I'll throw you a party. How about that? I'll bring all my friends plus your friends. I know Fate and Chance quite well, you know. And I definitely hit it off nicely with the time. Boy, are they funny people. The first time any of them saw me, they fainted. Luckily, I was able to revive them with my red velvet jalapeno cakes. But those are for especially hard cases. They kind of looked as exhausted as you are right now, actually.
My...
Death breathed tiredly.
I wonder why.
I know, right? But don't worry, I'll be back in a jiffy. Soon your dark grey home and bland interior decorating will be colourful, stylish, and most important of all, fun! Don't go anywhere, because this will rock your world.
And with that, a pink blur later, Pinkamena Diane Pie was gone. In her place was an invitation to his party. Expertly titled, Death's Door, Don't Knock, Just Walk Right In. RSVP unnecessary. Meet up in 5 minutes. Bring treats and a smile. Suffice to say, Death was wishing he, himself, could die. Sighing wistfully, he stared at the gaping hole that led out to his front porch, and at the door he had so expertly crafted himself.
I hope my insurance company covers Pinkie Pie collateral.
Death mumbled. I love this one! The Death is so funny. Death is just funny. Funny, funny, funny. I'll put a warning at the beginning that this is a teen story, so just warning. Oh, I love it. Anyway. Hope you all enjoyed. that was Death's Door by Dr. Disco, and I'll see you all next time. Keep watching that moon. And a howling thank you to my Patreons.